I'm Joyce. Welcome to Powerhouse. The series aims to look at insights and challenges for successful women within various industries. And today we have women in hospitality. So I want to welcome Vicky Lau, head chef and owner of Tate Dining Room, with Yvonne Cheung, director of restaurants at Swire Hotels, and Beverly Cheng, market director of PR at Marriott International. So today we're going to explore a bit about innovation within the industry, how to adapt to challenging times, and also getting the word out there about the brand and services. So perhaps we can start with a quick intro in terms of the roles and responsibility and how you got into this industry.
Maybe some of you have been to my restaurant. So my restaurant is quite close by. It's on Elgin Street. It used to be on Elgin Street and now it's on Hollywood Road. So we've been open for around 8 years. Before I was a chef, I was actually a graphic designer. I studied in New York and I just really love creating things. I think it's one of my calling in life is to create things. So I started out doing ceramics and graphics and I really enjoyed it, but I thought there was something missing in terms of dimension there because there's no connection between me and the viewer. So I was like trying to explore more things, how I can be more hands-on with things. And then after a while, moving back from New York, I started my design firm, doing some freelance work. And then I thought maybe it's time for me to explore different fields as well. So I was thinking between interior design or something else. And at that time, I shared an office with one of my close friends, and she really enjoys cooking as well, and all day we would talk about food in the office. So we thought maybe we should, explore culinary school, because even when sometimes a very simple task like baking a cookie at home can seem, weird, and like every time is different, it's not consistent, or there's something missing, like they're not telling you something. So that was what I was thinking, that you must go to school to learn something. So we enrolled in Cordon Bleu in Bangkok, and then at first it was just a 3-month course, and I really enjoyed it, and I finished the 9-month. After that, I moved back to Hong Kong, and I worked at one restaurant, used to be Sepage, which is Les Amis now in Singapore, with Chef Sebastian. And then afterwards, I thought, why don't I just combine everything that I know about food and design and things that I love into a cafe. So I rented a space on Elgin Street, and I thought, yeah, a little cafe would be quite nice. But as I was testing dishes, I just really enjoy more like a set menu, like fine dine style. So that was when Tate was first born. So now it's been 8 years. We've moved from Elgin Street into Hollywood Road, which is a bigger restaurant. We've matured in terms of food and thinking philosophy, and which is very necessary nowadays to really lock down onto your roots. In between that, we have opened a pastry shop called Poem, and also a catering company called Butler, which focuses on bespoke items for clients. And Poem Cake Shop is to celebrate with people, and also combining what East and West, challenging, like actually my main goal is to challenge what is modern Chinese, but because I didn't really study in Chinese cooking, so I used the Western kind of thinking and slowly recalling some of my memories with food, and also exploring Hong Kong ingredients and market and what I know about Chinese food, and hopefully pushing culinary forward that way into something more modern Chinese, and also at the same time defining what is Hong Kong. I think nowadays that's also a very important topic. So that's me.
Hello everyone. I work with Swire Hotels. I'm based at our property in the Upper House. I don't know if some of you may have been there before. I've had the pleasure of working with this company in different roles for about 10 years. In terms of getting into food and beverage, I'm actually the youngest of 3 daughters. My parents really really hoped and expected that I would be different, that I would be the boy. It didn't happen. And so I think also when you're the youngest in a traditional family, sometimes they sort of just, like, the leash is a little bit longer. So I had a little bit more freedom to kind of break away from some of the traditional expectations. So I was set up to, you know, be a lawyer, to do all the stuff, but I ended up graduating from school, studying anthropology, that kind of thing, and actually going off to culinary school instead of law school, which is slightly different. And then from there, sort of snowballed into, you know, working very intimately with food, and I've always been into food and wine and restaurants and service, and I think that also being the position that I have in my family, it's very natural for me to always sort of want to look after people around me. So kind of a natural inclination for me. And then I moved after school. I went to New York for culinary school. Went back to Napa Valley for kind of wine immersion, continuing to work in hotels. That's always been a gravitational pull for me as well. And then had a great opportunity to work in Hong Kong with a very exciting young hotel company. And then that's been the last 10 years. So my story is a little bit more straightforward when it comes to eating and drinking quite a bit. So, yep.
Okay. So for myself, I'm still relatively new to the hospitality scene. Before that, I was actually a journalist for 6 to 7 years. So I came to Hong Kong to kind of cover the art and entertainment scene. And I quickly got to know the city that way, and I went to a couple of different publications. But then after about 6 or 7 years, I wanted a new adventure. So I quit, I took time off, I traveled, I did a 10-day silence meditation, and then I started freelancing. And I think it was during that time that I thought, actually, I've never worked for a big company or a corporate company before, and when you work for publications, you never have budget, and you're always like hustling, you're always being super scrappy. And I was like, what is it like to work for a company that actually has money, and you can spend it, and you can have these great marketing campaigns, and you can be really strategic. And I thought maybe I could take my skills in journalism and apply it to communications. And I also didn't want to do like pharmaceuticals or law or, I don't know, gadgetry, like things that I'm not that passionate about. I wanted to do something that I love, which is travel, which is hospitality, which is really great hotels and brands. So yeah, so then I got the job at Marriott, and it was 3.5 years that I was there in Asia Pacific, leading 16 global brands, kind of working on the campaigns, as well as kind of amplifying the different stories of how you differentiate the brands. I think once you get to a corporate strategy level, you have to really think about, okay, I've got 16 brands, they're all kind of similar, how do I differentiate them? So I think that was where my journalistic background came into play, because it's all about telling good stories and working on good partnerships that can help you differentiate and kind of break away from all the noise. Now in my role as market director, I actually moved to Canada, and now I'm back because Canada is in complete lockdown. But basically, yeah, so in a more local role, I think it's more about spotting trends, what can be good stories in Toronto or in whatever city you're in. It's slightly different but very complementary.
Since you have the mic, I'm going to start off. So we have one question, slightly different each, based on your experience. Beverly, can you explain like maybe one of the more memorable campaigns you did for Marriott International? And you kind of touched on like difference of local and regional, but maybe you can expand on that a little bit in terms of moving your role from a more local, starting more local, and then kind of expanding regional.
Right. So one of my favorite partnerships, which is now in its 4th year, it's actually a global partnership with Marriott Hotels, the flagship brand, and TED. So
because Marriott, it's kind of everyone just thinks of it as a business hotel. So what's the difference between Marriott, from Conrad, from Hilton, from kind of everything that's in a mid-tier, businessy kind of vibe? So that's why we partnered with TED to make sure that we did have kind of thought leaders and innovators that came to the hotel, and also we would have events where we would basically host a huge TED salon on topics that are really relevant. So in 2018, we went to India, to Bangalore, which is actually a thriving tech hub, and we decided to talk about women in tech, because it was also around the time of the Me Too movement in India, and it was really picking up the idea of women in empowerment. And we thought, okay, well, let's go to India, but let's also focus on what women are doing there, how women are being innovative, how they're being tech forward instead of just focusing on the Me Too. And then in 2019, we went to Singapore, and because Singapore is known for its innovation in design, it's also been spotlighted because of Crazy Rich Asians. We decided to talk about creativity and how it's burgeoning as kind of like a design capital. And then we always invite a panel of speakers to talk about it from Asia Pacific, and then that kind of bridges kind of Marriott and the way it positions itself as an innovative business brand, and also another big global brand like TED. So that's one way that we would do regional campaigns as opposed to local campaigns, which would again focus on perhaps just one country. So if I'm focusing on Canada, I would be able to identify trends in Canada that I can jump on and use the hotels to exemplify. So whether that is, for example, bringing Aboriginal artists, because last summer there was a big debate on Aboriginal rights. So how do you as a brand kind of talk about the hot topics and make yourself relevant without being too controversial, but supporting a cause to make sure that you are out there voicing your support. So yeah, that's kind of the difference. It's kind of, I guess, with regional, it's more you're trying to look for partnerships and stories that are relevant to many different countries, because Asia Pacific, we're looking at probably 21 different countries where our hotels are represented, as opposed to something more local where it's just one country. So in a way, it's easier because it's perhaps one common language. Oh, Canada has 2 national languages, but I mean, it's more of one group of people as opposed to a very large diversification of different races.
That's good. Thank you. And then Yvonne, you mentioned you did cooking and your sommelier. And so I just want to expand a little bit on your role as a sommelier, first at Upper House and Swire Hotels, and transitioning to managing all the restaurants. And what are the challenges through that process?
Okay. I had this wonderful opportunity to work, up close in an intimate environment, working service with wine, and then moving into corporate office to help build brand identity and things like that for a company in its nascent stages. It's not the size of the Marriott group by any measure. We opened in 10 years. We opened 7 hotels and 6 restaurants, and that's tremendous for a little homegrown company that started basically in 2008. And so transitioning from basically floor service into kind of stepping away from that up close experience to sort of looking at procurement, training standards, recruitment, brand building, all the things that are actually I do find quite interesting, but I really miss sort of tying it back together, bringing it full circle back to the guest experience, which is such a big part of what we do as a brand. So it was really great to be part of that building stage, and then we took a little break from opening a number of hotels. We thought that 7 properties in 10 years was not so bad, and then I had this opportunity to move back to property And actually, to be honest, it was a little bit challenging because I hadn't sort of seen myself, to be perfectly honest, I hadn't seen myself going back into an operational role as much as I do enjoy it. But I know the team. I work with, really smart, talented, passionate people. All the people that you want to be surrounded by all the time with your friends and your family. And so I had that with this team at the hotel, and going back to a group of people that are like-minded, that all want to, build something really special. So changing my focus from managing product to managing a lot more people was also a little bit daunting, because I'm actually not always, if I have a bottle of wine to sell or a dish to talk about, I'm fine. But I'm not always someone who's necessarily comfortable being in front of a lot of people. I'm technically blushing right now.
Can't tell.
So that was also a change for me. But I think my biggest lesson moving back in this direction was just the reward of working with a really wonderful team of people, everyone contributing bits and pieces to build a much bigger whole. I know it sounds very cliche, but it's really there when you work with the talented group. So there you
Awesome.
go.
Thank you. And Vicky, how do you balance being a chef, head chef, and managing, being an entrepreneur, basically managing all your businesses?
I think we all have quite a lot of dual roles in life, but this is definitely one of the harder ones that I had to battle at the beginning. In Hong Kong, it's not very common to be a chef and owner. In that sense, is because as a chef and the owner, it can be quite a different kind of skill set. So at the beginning, it was quite a struggle, because being a chef, one of your goals is to push your food to maximum, and in that sense, you need really good ingredients. And even as simple as making a chicken stock, you want like the best chicken, and that's quite costly. But as an owner, of course, you need to make sure you can support everyone and making some money through it, right? At the end of the day, it's still a business. So with that, it's a bit of like split personality sometimes. But in the end, I find what people look for is really just quality. So we spend more on the quality of things, and I think that justifies because a majority of your business is returning customers. So when you have that kind of quality, people will just come back. Other things that I find helpful in this kind of situation is to logically think and not with emotions. I think that has really helped me into plowing through a lot of problems that I've encountered at the restaurant. It's really, look at the facts, look at the statistics, don't work with emotions. A lot of times in hospitality, it's so much a people's business. You have to be very people friendly and really take care of everyone, and that emotional side would kick in, and your closeness with your staff as well. But I think logic really kicks in and try to solve these kind of issues in between.
Thanks. So with the latest situation, it's been a long year, a tough year for everyone, but especially in the food and business and hospitality business. So maybe you guys can talk about what are the challenges for yourself, for your brand, and anything that you need to change or pivot that makes it that you have to make that work better ongoing.
So I think hotels have been deeply impacted. I think at one point, in Canada, I think more than 90% of hotels are closed. At one point in Asia Pacific, a large percentage of hotels were also closed. And because of that, I think a lot of people have also lost their jobs, right? So I think with the people who are remaining, it just becomes a lot more difficult for them, because before there might have been 10 people on a team, or there might have been 10 people plus like 4 agencies or whatnot. And even at the hotel level, marketing teams are being really shrunk and squeezed. So I think right now it's just kind of doing your best with what you have, kind of working with a lot less, and everyone feels the impact. I think with marketing budgets, people are just getting really, really scrappy. So now the focus is less on maybe like campaigns and partnerships that are really flashy or celebrity endorsements, like forget about it. It's more about kind of, okay, like what are the digital buys that can actually convert sales? What are the things that we can do as a hotel, whether it is to go into food delivery for the countries and the cities that are still in lockdown, or whether that is to really push staycations in places where people can go out, like Hong Kong and China and to some degree Korea. And also as an individual in marketing, one that is furloughed, like right now I'm furloughed. So like what is it that I individually can do in addition to my marketing role, right? Like, so for me, it's kind of like, okay, I can still write, I can still do content, I can still do copywriting. So let me utilize these skills and let me take this time right now to kind of learn more things that I can do and offer my services, and also to better myself so that when it picks up again, then I'll be ready.
I think it goes without saying that everyone in here, everyone in the world has been impacted. So I think the traditional margins, in industries like restaurants and hotels, not necessarily the most generous, not necessarily the most resilient after more than a few months at a time. So I think this has been, I think there's been so much anxiety with not knowing what's really going to happen in the next few weeks. And even as we resolve things here, the rest of the world remains a big question mark. And so even sort of hoping for international travel, for example, tourism, by the end of this year is sort of, no one's really counting on it, but we kind of have to. While at the same time, business models maybe are not built for this kind of situation. Nothing is. But I think worth looking at, this is really forcing people to look at technology in a different way once things get going. Looking at things like labor, looking at things like, what we can do that doesn't rely on entities that are much more variable. So actually, we talk about this quite a bit within my group of friends about what we would change for the future. Some of us say we would be much bolder in our decision making. The things that sort of that voice in our head that sort of says like maybe we shouldn't do that. But this pandemic has really taught us to be a little bit more fearless about making bolder decisions. I think looking at timelines, I think everyone has sort of been, we're all very careful as we need to be about our language and that kind of thing, but this is a first time learning experience for probably for most of us. I think with SARS that actually feels like it was far away, but it seems like it's definitely been beneficial, to have that vaccination, if you will, into what the situation is now. But on the bright side, it has, I feel like for those of us who are lucky enough to continue working, it gives us some insight into the weak areas in our businesses, the areas that we can really focus on and strengthen as we build back up, and at the same time to really pay attention to what the community needs, CSR initiatives, things that we can do to help the people and everyone around us, our own teams, the people around us, in terms of what we can do to contribute to that. I think the social fabric is something that everyone needs to think about because, as we've all seen, this has stripped us down to, who we are as communities of people. All the things that we thought might have been important have sort of shifted. So I think that that's been not bright, I'm sorry, but more of a mindful quality that's come out of it.
For me, I really think it really goes back to the topic of today as being innovative during this time. And for me, what is innovation is actually being adaptive of what's going on, and also educate yourself with knowledge around these topics. For us, we really didn't get hit so bad as an independent restaurant, but we have been very reactive to everything that goes on. In terms of we're not shy to talk about things. Sanitation, we post online, like all the things. We really maximize and question every single thing that goes on at the restaurant. Like when we would study, like what, as a guest come in, what would they get into contact with, like, because people don't want to touch a lot of things. So what are some things that we can minimize? Do we need this door here? Do we have a plastic here? Do they sanitize here? And as they go in, already at a very earlier time before the 1.5 meter, we already put in the glass panels. We sanitize AC, and then we post online to let people know these are individual air ducts that we have. It's a bit different from hotels. So people are less afraid, and because all these things actually they call us and ask us. So I think it's very important to also talk about these things openly. And like on Instagram, we would have all these photos on all the things that we do at the restaurant. And other than the restaurant sanitation and things that we can do, in terms of food, we also question a lot. Do we really need to fly in the turbot from France? And can we use local food? And I must say now, it has really pushed me to be a lot more sustainable and find resources around me, and also question everything. Like, why are we doing this? Why do we have to use this lobster instead of this other one? Is it just a trend thing? Do we have to put the caviar on the menu? Like, all these things we question, and I think that's the innovative part that comes in.
And to add on to that, because I do want to drill down a bit more about innovation in the business, are there other, so currently you have to be more innovative, but in the past few years, you feel like there's any particular technology, or everything's kind of going online, digital, or even with the supply chain, is there anything, one major project that you feel like it's been particularly innovative for your business? Maybe we can start with Vicky and address that first.
So many things. As a chef, I think we are a lot more vulnerable with internet and technology in that kind of sense. So, but then we also use that in our favor, because people want to read these stories now. So I think it's mainly that it's communication part that changed the most for us. Other things like ordering food, yes, and also booking system, yes, but communication definitely has the most impact.
I think innovation-wise within the restaurant industry around the world, people are forced to look at farming much more differently now than before, and farming has been something that it's had a troubling kind of downward trend, because a lot of the young people who come from who work in the country with their families, they don't want to do that anymore. This generation doesn't want to work. They want to move to the cities, and you see that throughout the world. And so there's been a lot more urban farming technology that's very relevant to dense cities and areas like Asia, and this is something that I'm personally really interested in researching more and learning more about. Things like more sustainable aquaculture. Overfishing has been a problem. A lot of people are really looking much more carefully into these kinds of businesses. I love kind of sustainable thing, but there is hope for those of you who are also caviar lovers. big sturgeon farms in different parts of the world. Actually, I think the 5th one opened in Vietnam. I know that sounds odd, but you know, everything evolves and changes. There's also no-kill caviar. There's different ways to extract that without killing the mother and all that. And then things like, I think we'll see this, you know, at the guest level when you come in to eat at Vicky's restaurant. Over time, you'll see the results of more efficient farming, less labor-intensive farming, that kind of thing, which will ultimately change the way that we do service in the end. I think the last 10 years, and I think the last 5 years with the speed of technology and adaptability of these industries and supply chain, and then having this pandemic, and then the next 10 years, I really think that we're going to see a tremendous change in this. Rather, restaurants are always sort of a little bit more archaic. Like when it comes to like basic technology, you still see these large like monitors for, you know, punching your food order. Like this is really, you know, on the basic level. But I really think that the culture of farming, supply chain, even things like impossible meat, which was new and exciting some years ago, but now is really standard. So I think these things move really quickly.
Okay, so I think in terms of innovation, I think we already tried to go mobile and do as limited contactless hotel experience as possible quite a few years ago. Initially it was because we were trying to appeal to Gen Z travelers. So of course everything for the younger audience is done mobile. And also Gen Z is also the largest growing kind of age group in terms of like luxury brands, hospitality. They're the biggest growth, especially in China for international brands. So I think as a company, mobile check-in now is probably the way to go, and I think a lot of other hotels will be doing the same. So you don't have to like meet another staff or another person to check in. You can go straight to your room, you can use your phone and go into your room, it'll be ready right away. And instead of phoning or instead of getting someone to help you in your room, you can just easily text them and everything will be delivered with as minimum contact as possible. And I think going back to the sanitation thing, that's a big focus right now. So the kind of investment that hotels are putting into getting state-of-the-art sanitation and training the staff, that's a big thing.
Thanks. That's all the more important nowadays, and it's good that it pushes it. I mean, in that sense, it's good that it pushes it up a bit to focus on sanitation. Great. Well, within your area, do you feel like there's any challenge being, you know, female in your specific area? I mean, there's different parts of the hospitality that you represent, obviously. And did you ever feel like there's harder to move up, or there's a glass ceiling, basically?
I mean, I work at the office, and basically everyone in marketing is female. I think it's probably 80% women. There's 20% men, but even there, I mean, it's mainly women. And especially in PR, it's almost always women. And a lot of lifestyle journalists are also women, so I'm just around women all day long, every day. And I mean, it's great because I love going into the different regions, the different countries, and working with amazing teams of women. And that's the best way that you know about the local culture is when you step into Nepal and you meet the PR team, it's like 5 women, and then they tell you like what their normal day is like, right? So for me, in communications, I don't have a challenge, but then if I walk to the other side of the office in operations, it's like all men, all Caucasian men everywhere. So I think if we were to just kind of somehow blend more, have a meeting ground, which would probably be finance or something. But really, I think in a traditional hotel setting, it is quite segregated. So I think. Again, women mainly do marketing, they mainly do PR, they mainly do sales. and then the men will be in operations. So because of my career path, I haven't felt stopped. But I would imagine if I was a woman wanting to be, a chef or wanting to be in operations besides rooms, because rooms are also always women, I would be quite limited. And I think also in Asia, I find that the higher you move up, the more male and Caucasian it actually becomes, even today. So that's something that I've witnessed.
Me personally, I would say working in the service industry, since I was a teenager, my first job was at a Noah's Bagel, for those of you who might know what that is, eons ago. But it's not common for that many women to stay in the food industry and the service industry, and for many reasons, relating to working hours and just general sort of challenges physically, mentally, nonstop, catering to people's needs. But actually, right now, today, I'm probably working with more women than I ever have before. And in the beginning, it was like, oh, what's this going to be like? Because it's not normal. But it's really great. I also think that it's healthy, best to have a mix. Obviously, I'm really working on bringing in more women into our kitchens as well, just to balance it out. I feel like everyone behaves a little bit better, like all of us, when there's a good mix. But in reality, I think challenges definitely persist. I don't have children, but I do have colleagues who they're my age or younger, and starting a family, and it's really, really difficult. But it's not impossible, but really difficult when you work that way. And I think that's a natural reason why women fall out of this business so quickly, and then to come back to it, I think is quite a challenge. So, but I think it really also boils down to the working culture that we are in, for people to understand that, nowadays, if you say, let's keep 2 slots open for women on this kind of leadership level, for example, I know a lot of men who would say, why are we opening up 2 spots for women? And it's kind of like, well, there were never spots to begin with, right? It was never naturally included. So it's not doing a favor, it's just leveling the field a little bit. But I really feel like it has been a transition time for women, and sometimes women also are, a challenge to ourselves, I feel like. For me, growing up in the U.S. and having a traditional Chinese family, and then moving to Asia, these are, to be honest, kind of, it's a balancing act often, because I want to be perceived as just exactly who I am, as opposed to, being a Chinese woman who's maybe hasn't fulfilled what society expected of me, whether it's this society or the U.S., or being, some of my team, some of them call me, like, they refer to me as like a man, because maybe I don't follow specific social norms. So this is an ongoing thing, day to day, but I think we all see that. So not challenges necessarily. I've been really fortunate, but I also think it's how we react to it.
I unfortunately don't work alone with a lot of women. In the 8 years that I've been attending the Michelin event, in a room of 200 people, I'm the only woman there for 8 years straight. and it's really quite sad every year that happens. And I actually got into this industry never thinking twice about being a woman chef at all. Even in culinary school or working at Sepash, I didn't really think too much about it, just because it never crossed my mind that I couldn't do it better than men. It's really not until in 2015 I got the title Asia Best Female Chef that a lot of journalists would ask me how do I feel about being a woman today and about being a woman in the kitchen, that I have to answer and think about these questions deeply. And actually it really helped me, because now it's became a motivation for me to help out a lot of women to find their passion. In a traditional like home setting, women are normally the cookers at home, so why not in the professional world? It's actually very suitable for women. It needs caring, it needs a lot of multitasking in the kitchen, so it's actually very suitable for women. So in Asia, one of the reasons why there are not a lot of women is because of its social value. Traditionally, like your mom would say, don't marry a chef, don't become a chef, and like it's all a mess, and don't go there. So the social value is very low, and a lot of times even women are very into cooking, they never thought of it as a career. And even though, the funny thing is, some of them really come into my kitchen and try being a chef, and they would give up after 1 or 2 years, because they think, oh, what happens when I have a kid? And also another big issue that they face is, how do I control all these men in the kitchen? So a lot of times I have to put them in kind of a higher position and also give them a little bit of advantage, a little bit of like tips here and there, so that they can be a little bit smarter in managing people. And so this happened quite a few times. I've asked like some ladies that I thought are very responsible and capable to be my sous chef, and they will say, oh, but you know what, I don't know if I can do it. I've heard that many times, and I thought that's crazy that anyone would jump on it. So it really is encouraging in that kind of sense to jump out of that and to really speak up for yourself, and don't be afraid to lead. And on top of that, this year, unfortunately, we have lined up a lot of female chefs event from all over the world, from Brazil, from Slovenia, really from all over the world. But with COVID, some of them didn't happen, but it will happen once the virus is gone. Because I want people to see also in Asia that there are a lot of female chefs, and that you should not be afraid to follow your passion. So I think working with females is also what would make us all come together, and then the message will be more strong in the end.
Thank you. And to follow up, we have some really good advice, but just want to have a last question in terms of any one specific advice you would leave with the audience, and then after that I can open up to maybe 1 or 2 questions after that.
I think what I've learned during COVID is that everyone has it within themselves. So a lot of times, you look at your job, you might look at your partner, you might look at whatever it is, you might always look around you for help, for the entry, for the opportunity. But actually you have it, and you don't have to always rely on something external. I think sometimes it's good to take this time and to think about what you want and what you want to create for yourself, and also maybe how you want to support your teams and how you want the future of your business to be. Yeah.
I think for me tonight, working in the busy environments that we do, I find that sometimes if I'm with someone, I'm thinking about what I'm going to say instead of listening to what that person is saying. And I find that the art of listening is much more active than we often think it is, and it makes a really big difference. I think when all of us are working really hard, we sort of just lose that ability sometimes to be still, to listen, and to be there for people around us.
For me, I think I really like this quote by Simon Sinek that says, "People don't buy what you do, but people buy why you do it." So I think a lot of times, even with my staff, I ask them like, "Why do you do this?" And really get down to the bottom of why you're doing something that really helps at this time into thinking and feeling you're actually achieving something and not just floating and doing what the world is asking you to.
Thank you. Any specific questions?